Welcome to Fahrenheit 140.
Why 140? It's the temperature that water burns after 6 seconds. I'm Robert Mace.
And I'm Carrie Thompson, and we're the Fahrenheit 140 co-hosts covering the news you need to know about climate change in Texas. Howdy, everyone, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 7.
Woo-woo!
We're wrapping up the season with a special episode today, and I'm so happy to introduce our producers, Anna and Sarah. They're going to be joining the conversation today. We're going to talk about the season, reflect on all the wisdom. We're going to do a pop quiz. We've been asking y'all to ask us anything. So we're going to take some questions today that were turned in through our social media channels. And we're going to try to do a little bit of climate myth busting. Sound good, Robert?
That sounds great.
Hey, first pop quiz.
Okay.
Do you remember earlier in this season, you predicted how many 100-degree days we would have?
I'm going with 72 since that's what I submitted to Axios.
Because last year we had 80.
80.
And I predicted 200 days.
Okay.
Sarah, what was it?
What was the answer?
Sarah?
Drum roll.
It was 30 days.
Rah, rah, rah.
Oh,
Much
wow.
lower.
I mean, I'll
Very
take it.
surprising.
Which is great. It
Take
still
it.
felt overall hotter though. I
Just because it was so dry, I think.
It was cool in the spring. So that's a good development. We'll have to see when we get to the end of the year, like where the overall temperature sits.
Well, what do you think about the winter? How's that looking?
Right now, there's still a prediction of La Nina. So that would be warmer than normal and drier than normal conditions.
Mm.
However, every month, the new projections come out. It's delaying the arrival of La Nina, and the La Nina is weakening, or the predictions of it's going to be weak.
Interesting.
So, there's actually, I think, a good chance that we don't see a La Nina, or we see a very short La Nina that just squeaks by as a La Nina. So we'll see. So it may be more kind of La Nada conditions.
Oh, but
We'll keep our fingers crossed that maybe it's not as serious and we get some rainfall, but the 3-month seasonal outlook that NOAA puts out, pretty grim, warmer than normal and drier than normal, and pretty substantial on both.
Well, we're recording this in mid-late October,
Mhm.
and I guess I heard that this is normally our second wettest month here in Central Texas, but we've only gotten like 0.1 inches of rain so far, or something like
or
that.
0.01.
0.01,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah, I was there in Austin
Oh, you felt
when
it.
the 7 drops came down out of the sky.
Well, let's make a t-shirt.
Just in terms of where the state is in general, there was a really big downpour in the kind of heart of the state, maybe the geographic heart of the state around the Abilene area.
Mm.
Didn't get much notice. There was actually even some flooding up there. But the rest of the state's looking pretty bad. Here in our offices in San Marcos, the springs are flirting with 80 cubic feet per second, which is really low. It's about half of normal flow. Comal Springs looks pretty sad if you stop in at New Braunfels. Hill Country just looks crisp. It's just like one cigarette flicked out the window from going up in flames. The Rio Grande still is in terrible condition, real serious issues in the lower Rio Grande Valley. And then the drought's expected to expand through much of the state. So again, it's not looking really good at this point. But we still have water. I guess that's the good news. I think everybody's heard of Helene and Milton impacts on the eastern part of the country, the devastation, and particularly like the massive flooding from Helene up through the Carolinas. So our hearts go out to those people, and there'll be some links and resources in the show notes for those in need and those wanting to pitch in and help. I'll make a Texas note on that there was some discussion about how unprecedented it was for Helene to kind of move that far inland. But here in Texas, we're no stranger to that. We've had some doozies, come up here in the hill country. Some of the most massive floods have been hurricane remnants. But one notable one roared up the Rio Grande Valley and then went out over the Edwards Plateau. And it sent a 30-foot wall of water water through Ozona,
Wow.
and there's like a mellow little creek that runs through Ozona, and that turned into a 30-foot wall of water, caused a lot of damage.
30 feet.
And then there was a massive downpour, 2 massive downpours from that storm that first sent an 85-foot wall of water down the Pecos River, followed by a 95-foot wall of water, flash floods down the Pecos River, which is why that beautiful bridge that goes over the Pecos River, it's up so high.
Right.
The original bridge used to be much lower. It was completely wiped out. But during those floods, the water level was like 65 feet above the road base. These are serious things. So just a reminder that it is voting season.
Yeah.
And so
early voting has started here in
That's
Texas
right.
already.
Early voting started. Go vote.
Are you rocking the boat, Robert, this year? That's a throwback for all of you Gen
That's
Xers
right.
out
Yeah,
there
rock
and
the
TVs. Rock the vote. Record turnout so far here in
Wow.
Central Texas. So just also a reminder, take some snacks, take a drink.
Yeah,
Yes.
check that weather too.
Yeah, because it's still hot. It's still hot out there.
Yeah, go vote. Don't care how you vote, just go vote. I think
Just vote.
everybody should vote. So we're going to turn it over to
I'm
our
so
tormentors.
scared.
Don't be scared.
The producers are going to hit us with some hard questions. What do you got?
Such hard questions. We're just going to start with some light questions about how you enjoyed the season. So the first one we have is whether or not you learned anything new this season. Did either of y'all learn something new?
Well, I think, the theme this season was health, right? Mental and physical health as it relates to climate. And I think just bringing that into focus was really helpful for me. And also hopefully helpful for those of you that listened and trying to understand it, how it's affecting us, directly.
Well, one thing I learned from this season is it's really nice having a producer. Because before it was just me and Carrie
just winging it.
Yeah. So having Sarah join us and Anna helping out, hopefully we sound better to folks out there. And
we definitely look better.
having things more organized. That's been great. But I guess I'm with Carrie on the kind of better understanding from heat. And we had Dr. Zoe Mintz, who's here at Texas State and Meadows and Dowd chair a place that he works, heat and cities. And so that's been illuminating to me because I think, a lot of times I'm very water focused and I'm like, to hell with the trees, I mean, I love trees, don't get me wrong, but when things are getting really bad, do we really need to be watering the trees?
And now you know the answer is
now we know the
yes.
answers. Yeah.
All right. So what really surprised you, either from news or interviews this season?
On the news side, how solar is taking off in terms of affordability, and then solar and battery power combined, which is kind of a holy grail, how that is going to be much more affordable and probably the cheapest form of energy in a few years. And then seeing the projections, they're projections, so who knows, but the projections of where solar is going, it's going to really dominate the world's power mix. That was surprising to me as well as inspirational in the sense of giving me hope that human ingenuity and the world is going to be able to eventually solve this problem.
I was thrilled to learn a little bit more about San Antonio's leadership on the climate space. And not that it should surprise me, they've always been leaders in water. But I know, Robert, you're involved in some of the innovative work that the city of Austin's doing. And so to learn about the city of San Antonio really leading nationally, it's really inspiring that we're kind of in a place, Texas has a reputation for being at the heart of a lot of the problems around climate, but we're also maybe at the heart of a lot of the solutions around climate.
Yeah,
so that's
including solar.
Feels exciting.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, I was really excited to hear about China producing enough lithium-ion batteries to power the world.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't know
What
that.
grade would you give us in that answer? Sarah?
Are we
How do
getting
we do?
graded?
How do we do?
110.
A++. Okay, then we can continue.
All right. Let's see. Was there any information or news or interviews that got you down?
I think that's the challenge, right? Is having to acknowledge some of these hard facts and understand what the science means, and then also make choices on how we're going to persevere and accept the challenge, right? So,
Yeah, and I think just the continuing impacts, we're continuing to see evidence of it happening to a certain degree that has to happen for change to happen. It's, awful to see these things happen, but at the same time, there's a bright spot of, convincing more people that something needs to be done.
So now on the flip side of that, what inspired you?
the focus on self-care. This is probably 6 or 7 years ago. I saw this film about climate change with Jeff Bridges in it, and it was really depressing because at the end, he basically said, there's no hope for changing the outcome. It's sort of out of our hands, and all you can do is sort of go meditate and be a good person. And I was like, is that really all we can do? And I don't think that's all we can do, but I do think that's an important part of how we can find the strength to keep working. And I'm going to reference our climate conference that actually wasn't on the podcast, but we had a speaker talk to us about the idea that we're powerless is actually one of the biggest threats facing the planet. To remember that we're not powerless, but that we also have to be in a place that we're okay so that we can put our talents and strengths toward the fight. I was really inspired, all of our guests really speaking to what it's going to take to keep ourselves whole so that we can do this.
I was actually really inspired too by Doug mentioning that it's just good for the bottom line to kind of bring in climate resilience into your community. And I think there's a common misconception that switching or making adjustments is not helpful or is really expensive, but seeing that it can actually help with the bottom line might help people change that mindset.
Yeah, because whether you plan or not for it, it's coming.
Well, and like you were talking about these freak storms or these, having, during the ice storm here a couple of years ago, how much we relied on solar power and the fact that we had it really saved a lot of human lives. And so that, it is a reality. We just got to be ready for whatever's coming.
Did anything make you hopeful?
I mean, every episode, I hope Robert's not going to talk about flatulence and cats. I don't know how I keep showing up with that hope, but...
Carrie, that's a great segue to our pop quiz.
Okay.
And that's actually our first question.
Oh my gosh.
Just raise your hand if you have an answer to this question. And how many episodes this season did Robert reference flatulence, gas, or feces?
How many episodes were there?
This is our 7th.
So 7. I'm going to predict 7.
Oh, predict. I see. Okay. It's just like I haven't said anything yet. I'm gonna say, good grief, it's probably 6, but I'm gonna say 5 because I think there was one that slipped by. Yeah, that maybe I didn't. But
ding, ding, ding.
Oh,
I get it
you
right.
got it.
Hey.
Yeah, episode 1 and episode 5. You did not mention anything.
Was he there? Was he there for those episodes?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I still might be wrong though because you're assuming I'm going to say something in this episode.
I do assume that. We'll see.
But now I kind of have to say something in order to be right?
Yeah, that's true.
So, well, I'm always giving you the straight poop, so that's the...
Okay, what was Dr. Mient's jingle for urban greening?
Trees are the bee's knees.
Trees and the bee's knees. I like that.
That's a good one.
Heat ain't neat.
Use water to save water.
Oh.
Use water to save water. Nice.
At the time of Dr. Rose's interview, how many Texas prisons did not have air conditioning?
Like a number or a percentage? A number?
Percentage.
Percentage? Okay.
Or like a fraction.
Ooh. I don't remember the number, but I'm going to say 70%.
I was going to say 70.
Were you?
Yes.
Copycat.
Ah.
Well, now you got to say 69 or 71.
Oh, like Price is Right?
Yeah.
0.
Just to see.
No. $1. I was going to say 70.
Were you? Okay.
Yeah.
Y'all were real close.
Uh-huh.
It was 2/3, but Texas currently has 104 prisons, so that means about 68 total were without AC.
Wow.
Dr. Rob Dusler said spot sitting is a great way to connect with your local climate. What is spot sitting, according to Dr. Dusler?
It's like you're somewhere, you sit down and you just take in the moment, listen, feel, clear your mind
Observe.
and take in the moment. Yeah.
I concur.
Ding, ding, ding. I would say that's right.
Yay!
Yeah, he would say to kind of sit there and like make that part of your regular daily practice for like a long-term relationship with that part of your
Aw.
environment.
Yeah. And see how it changes over time. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, by what year is the San Antonio Climate Ready Plan designed to make San Antonio carbon neutral?
Oh, I think I know this one. 2050?
Oh,
Is
I'm
it?
going to go 2049.
That's a trick question,
Oh,
but you kind
no.
of got it right, Carrie.
Kind of.
Oh.
I got a kind of.
So initially, when they designed it and it was adopted by their city council, it was for 2050.
Okay.
But he did mention that it's under review right now because it may be adapted to current scientific recommendations.
Okay.
So that, they say that.
To 2049, probably. Yes.
yes, I'm sure
a little
that's the
sooner.
adjustment.
Yeah. So we'll see if that changes.
Okay, this last one, we're going to do a round robin here. Hurricanes, good or bad?
Oh, like at HEB, the
Yep.
hurricane cakes?
Yep.
Mhm.
Oh.
I'd
those are
eat one.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm for clever. It's a little dangerous because hurricanes can be very dangerous,
Mhm.
but props for being clever. And I would get one. Good or bad? Good or bad?
Good or
You-
bad?
hurricane
I mean,
cakes?
I'm all for it.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm all
cool.
for it. I
Yeah.
mean, they're colorful. They're
Yeah.
like cheeky. They're sort of
Yeah.
like in the moment,
Yeah.
But yeah, if it's real, that's because we're here, not in the face of a hurricane.
Right. But,
also.
yeah.
buy one and roll. If you're in the path, get out of the path and eat it on the road. Not while you're driving, though.
What do you
Yeah, I'm
think?
on the fence.
Yeah, a little
Uh,
too
I think it might be a little too tongue in cheek for such a
serious thing.
Absolutely. But at the same time, you actually made a really good point when they were rolling them out ahead of barrel that it could be a great communication tool
Yeah.
to let people know there's a hurricane coming.
Yeah.
Right.
But I also wonder if people would recognize that it was like Doppler colors or not.
Right.
And recognize
Yeah,
it's
it's a direct, yeah.
or just be
Which
really
bonus
excited about
points
the
for
rainbow.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I'm also on the fence, but coming from a PR communications background, I do think it's a cool way to kind of bring it into people's awareness and just, keeping it top of mind.
No
Yeah.
consensus. Are y'all ready for some
That was fun.
audience questions?
Sure.
Yeah. Seems like we need theme music.
I'll pop some in.
Sarah will hook us up.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with what is the greenhouse gas effect and how does it affect our climate?
So the greenhouse gas effect is when a greenhouse gas, and so methane is one, carbon dioxide is one. Those are two we hear most about. There are others. When they're emitted into or their levels increase in the atmosphere, we get additional warming. They're already causing warming, but we get additional warming. And that additional warming causes a feedback with evaporation, water evaporation from the ocean. So water vapor is also a greenhouse. It's not a gas, but it's also increases warming in the atmosphere. And so when you get these increases in greenhouse gases, it just kind of kicks off and creates this warming. Before there were any humans, there was still a greenhouse effect that was out there, but now we're twisting the dials a bit on some of the gases that are in the atmosphere.
Thanks, Robert. And then we have an anonymous question. Do you have to believe in climate change to build resiliency into water resources?
No, absolutely not. In fact, people are dealing with the ramifications of climate change, and that's something that people can directly relate to. So getting into sort of the causal factors is almost irrelevant. And, when you bring it down to your hometown, what you care about is, is my water available? Is it clean? Am I safe? Those are the questions that planners are asking, and the causalities are important at a policy level.
Mm-hmm.
But really, when you're in your own community, what matters is fundamentals. And what do you think, Robert?
Yeah, I agree 100%. setting aside climate change, if we lived in a world without it, we still are at risk of experiencing a drought worse than the drought of records.
Right.
And we do see parts of the state that do, experience new droughts of record. And then we could look in the past on tree rings and see we've had worse droughts in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And so those droughts could come revisit us as well.
So this was submitted to us by listener Gregory Ellis. So assuming we somehow develop the political will to take action on climate change, what is the best we can accomplish? Is it possible to stop warming trend or only slow it down? How much can we slow it down?
Great question. I'll address it Greg does assume that we develop the political will. So we could slow it down, we can reverse the trend, and we could completely cancel it out. What the impacts are.
I do. Yeah. I have done some reading on this too. And I did pull up a table we'll put in the materials for the episode that was in the IPCC report.
Mm-hmm.
It talks about kind of the different scenarios. There's a lot to take in on this table, so I encourage y'all to go look for it. And they actually kind of chart the realities for people born in my generation, my parents' generation, people born in 2020. And they show what are your chances of experiencing these really dramatic changes. And they also show the different scenarios. It's a noticeable difference. It is a little encouraging. And then I've also read that if today we stopped producing carbon, it would take 20 to 30 years for that impact to sort of start showing up, for that mitigative impact.
Mm-hmm.
So the answer is yes, but it's going to take a while for our proactive actions to show up.
Great point. Yeah. Part of that taking time is that, oceans are such storers of heat. So it's like the increased heat on the planet from global warming has been absorbed by the oceans. And so as we do things in the atmosphere where we live to mitigate some of those things, that heat is going to transfer from the ocean back up to the atmosphere. In terms of reversing and maybe canceling out what we've done, that hinges on being able to capture CO2. I mean,
Right.
we could wait around and that'll take a very, very long
Right.
time. This is a futurist conversation, right?
Right.
We're nowhere near being able to do that. But, there are technologies that people are using. I offset some of my own personal carbon emissions, not those, Sarah, but through folks that harvest CO2 out of the atmosphere and then inject it into salts. And then there's chemical reactions that turn that essentially into limestone. Don't know if that can be fully scaled up. But one of the big questions was like the power side of it.
Yeah,
and so if
right.
power becomes really inexpensive and really green, then
This next question comes from David Todd. Do you think there's validity in the Gaia hypothesis, for instance, about stressed corals releasing DMS or bacteria converting that to DMSP, seeding clouds, reducing temperatures, benefiting corals, or is that a stretch? And DMS is dimethyl sulfide, and DMSP is an acronym for dimethyl sulfoniopropanate.
Okay.
So DMS is not the rapper then.
Yeah,
That's
that's
not
DMX.
okay.
DMX.
Okay.
I think
DMX.
he's
Okay.
more like, slow jams.
Okay.
Well, I can't speak to the DMS or DMSP specifically, but the Gaia hypothesis is this idea that the Earth is a living organism, just like I am, and even you, Robert. Just kidding. It's actually an old hypothesis, and I believe now they're calling it a theory. The idea is that the Earth is going to make adjustments as things change, right? Over the last several decades, there have been some observations that support that. If you think about what we know about evolution and how species adapt over time, it's sort of the idea that the Earth is going to do that too and is doing that. So I think it's a sort of yes, but again, I know there are a lot of people more qualified to speak on this than me, but my take on it is sort of that ecology does that, right? Everything lives in a system. So there are always adjustments being made, but a lot of those adjustments are going to be extinction. They're going to be loss. If the question is, will the Earth survive? I think absolutely the Earth is going to survive. Will we get to come along for the ride? It remains to be seen. And I think it's over 70% of vertebrate species loss in my lifetime, over 85% freshwater fish loss in my lifetime. That's unbelievable.
And you're a young pup.
And I'm super young. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Robert?
I agree. The Earth is in dynamic equilibrium, and when something happens, it kicks it out of that equilibrium. It's going to respond, and so we're seeing that with greenhouse gas emissions and the warming of the planet, and all the changes that you mentioned that are coming around because of that. Including changes to the water cycle, changes to the intensity of storms and droughts, and where it's raining, where it's not raining. So it's certainly responding to those changes, and that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody.
All right. This was submitted to us from an anonymous listener. Why don't hurricanes cross the equator?
Great question. The short answer is the Coriolis Effect. So that's the effect that determines how the water in your toilet swirls. Do I get bonus points?
I'll
Sarah?
get
No, okay. So the Coriolis effect, you see that reflected in hurricanes. And in fact, a big reason why you get hurricane development is because of the Coriolis effect. And so when a big storm forms, there's differential in the rotation of the Earth on the southern part of the storm versus the northern part, which kind of creates that drain effect. And so at the equator, if a hurricane were to cross, it's kind of going into an opposite Coriolis effect. And so it cancels it out. So that's why you kind of have this dead zone around the equator.
That's so interesting.
So if hurricanes scare the holy hell out of you, move down to the equator. Yeah.
All right. We've got 2 questions left.
Oh my gosh.
One came in from a middle schooler at not your ordinary school. It's a charter school.
Oh, fun.
What will happen if the glaciers melt? Their theory is that all the diseases will be freed and kill us all. And they say it's a little dark, but they really want to know what you think.
Oh, wow.
Well, the first thing, being a water guy, of course, I immediately think about water. It's going to raise sea levels a lot if all the ice melts. Gosh, I'm forgetting the exact number. Maybe 173 feet is what I'm...
230 feet.
230 feet. I'm being conservative.
If all glaciers melt.
Wow.
So there'd be massive sea level rise. And of course, most people live along the coast. When we say glaciers, I'm thinking all the ice. It's going to take a very, very long time. It took a very long time for those glaciers to form, and it'll take a very long time for them to melt. I'm not a biologist, but I've read the articles about concern of ancient diseases, bacteria and viruses being released. Like we're seeing baby mammoths, some old dudes that got trapped in the ice being revealed. Of course, there's hundreds of thousands of years of stuff, kind of cryo stored, if you will, in these glaciers. So I'm personally not losing a lot of sleep over that. It's certainly a concern, something to watch out for. I'm not terribly worried about it. Maybe I should be, but.
I mean, we don't know, right? It's kind of back to that conversation we were having about the Gaia Hypothesis, and even just the warming of the globe, that we're seeing increased virus transmission and fungal infections, and people trying to adapt to a changing world.
And it's also a reason why scientists are warning about the warming, that each fraction of a degree we get warmer, it kind of potentially opens up a Pandora's box. And we can keep that box closed if we minimize or stop the warming.
All right, last question.
Okay. I'm so nervous.
This one's for Robert, so don't worry, Carrie.
Okay.
Matthew Berg asks, given this newspaper, and it's an article from science.org that says, yes, cats are liquids, only in one dimension. The question is cat reuse or cat desalination more likely to play a larger role in state cat water planning? Relatedly, how hot does a cat have to be to burn or scald skin after 6 seconds?
I think we should probably orient our listeners that Dr. Robert Mays cares for.
Yes.
9 beautiful cats.
9?
8.
8. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Don't exaggerate. Yes, I do love cats. So I'm a big proponent of cat reuse.
What does that mean?
You should go to the pound or the Humane Society and adopt a cat.
Oh,
like maybe somebody died and they left their 8 cats behind, and so somebody or you take care of feral cats, or just a cat drops out of the sky into your lap. You should put that cat to good use. terms of desalinating cats, I wouldn't recommend that. So I did a quick Google, and actually there is a company called Cat that makes pumps for desalination. So I can't confirm that this is good equipment or not, but there is a company that makes cat pumps for desalination, seawater desalination purposes. So how hot does a cat have to be to burn, scald, or more accurately, scratch skin? After 6 seconds, it depends on the cat, depends how rough you are with the cat, what mood the cat is in. So unfortunately it's random. I've certainly seen cats spill over sofa edges and stuff, and then kind of just flow onto the floor.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, and they will fill any container. They do like containers.
They do like
So,
to, they are
even
bendy.
small or
They're
big.
very bendy.
They're like a gas, in that sense. They won't-
Okay.
yeah.
That's a double gas reference.
Wasn't even trying there.
We've got some myths to bust.
Oh, let's bust some myths.
Yeah. So, is warming caused by the sun?
Ah.
Kind of depends where that question's coming from. The sun certainly causes warming. In fact, if our sun was dead, it would be very, very cold here. So the sun is a source of energy that's coming into the planet. Some folks will point to, it's variations in the sun that's causing this recent warming that we're seeing. Recent, like particularly over the last 50 years, but over the last 100 years. And the answer is no. There are variations in solar energy that is causing some warming, as well as causing some cooling. And scientists have mapped and measured that out and can account for that as one of the factors, and a small factor compared to what we're doing to the atmosphere with greenhouse gas emissions.
All right. This one, audience question from Jenna. What's the deal with chemtrails?
If you're not familiar, you see those lines across the sky, or you see a jet go by and you'll see this kind of white plume, and it leaves this line that,
Yeah.
and if there's a lot of planes, it can crisscross.
It depends on the weather too, right? Like if it's more humid, they're going to stay there longer. And
yeah, and there certainly are emissions coming from jet engines.
sure.
There's some allegations that, maybe somebody's spiking those engines with something to cause more warming, which, I don't think that's the case.
What would the motive be for that?
Just to heat things up?
Just
I don't
to
know. Yeah.
keep us all
Yes.
excited.
It is interesting, though, that airplane traffic, just the kind of the condensation that it's causing, does have an impact on temperature. So our older listeners will remember 9/11, that the United States shut down all air traffic.
Mhm.
And it did have an impact
Wow.
on the temperature. It increased the daily temperatures during the day and then decreased the temperatures at night. So
Not having planes
correct.
increase the temperature.
Correct.
Oh my goodness.
Not by a lot, but it was measurable. Particulate pollution has a cooling effect. So I've read more about kind of the shipping industry. I don't know if this is true with airplanes or not, or jets, but in the shipping industry, it's had a cooling effect on the planet because the particulates reflect solar radiation. It intercepts it from hitting the earth, therefore it causes cooling. That's what I know about chemtrails.
That's a lot. I didn't know any of that.
I didn't either. That's
great.
amazing.
Good question.
All right, we've got another myth to bust.
Okay, let's bust it.
This myth says that the change in temperature is a continuation of natural variability. Is that true?
No, I would say no to that. There are natural processes the earth has to regulate itself. So we've all heard of El Nino, La Nina, and the oceans have their cycles, and those things are happening all of the time with and without climate change. Right, Robert?
Yes, they are. And sometimes folks will ask this question, we'll point to a deeper past. Like, for example, you can go back in time. You have to go back a long ways, but you can go back in time to where it was a lot warmer than it is today. To me, the question isn't, is this part of natural variability? The question is what are we doing to the climate now. Put a link or the graph that shows where scientists have accounted for the different variations of natural variability, as well as putting on the impacts of greenhouse gas emissions. And it's pretty strong. Like in science, you try to never be 100% certain about anything, but this is like 99.9999999% certain.
And history's always had hot periods and cold periods,
Right.
and they oscillate back and forth. But if you look at the last 20 years, it's hot, hot, hot.
Yeah, and we're seeing temperatures we haven't seen in a very, very long time.
Back to back to back to back.
Yes.
Yeah.
That being said, are we still below the tipping point?
For me, a tipping point is like something truly awful is happening. It's like, what is your definition of truly awful? And a tipping point, it's going to be more gradual. It could happen quickly over the course of years. In some sense, we've hit a tipping point where we're seeing the impacts of warming on the climate. This is something that's been predicted and projected for 70 years.
Right.
It goes back to the 60s when scientists first started warning about this. There's a Freudian slip. First started warming about this. And so we've sort of hit a tipping point in that we've warmed the planet enough that we are seeing the impacts. So in that
Impacts are
sense,
real.
kind of to your point, in that sense, we are hitting a tipping point. Maybe more dramatic tipping points are like the Atlantic currents suddenly dramatically changing, because it's carrying a lot of water, warm water up. And so if that current breaks down, that'll cause like a falling domino effect of impacts.
Collapses can happen very quickly. It's like we're gonna go very slow, and then things can happen very quickly. And we're making our best guess at what those will be, but we probably can't quite comprehend all of the implications of those things. I will share a link. I saw a study just come out of UC Santa Cruz. They did a statistical analysis of where we're at right now. And their conclusion was that using statistics, they cannot conclude that we're in a surge, even though we're feeling it. We're feeling it year after year after year. Their conclusion was we're not technically in a surge. And so, maybe there's hope there, but we definitely should pay attention, because this is the slow part. And once it starts going fast, we'll have fewer choices.
Mm-hmm. And you see the climate projections, it's assuming well-behaved climate is the way I put it. They look very smooth. And so it creates this false sense of certainty when you're planning for resilience and planning for the future. Reality is that the science community doesn't know what's going to trigger, what the impacts are going to be. We look to the past, sometimes the deep past, because it's been a very long time before something like this has happened. And certainly, I don't think anything has happened this quickly with the warming. Trying to learn from the past, but again, there's just no guarantees. We don't
when
really
all the
know.
parameters change,
Right.
they can't model that yet. So
that's the scary part. I'm borrowing this analogy and I forget from who, but it's like you're in a pitch black dark room, you're against one wall and you're told to walk to the opposite wall, and you get to take a small step at a time. But somewhere between you and that other wall, there's a 100-foot deep pit. So you just don't know
where it is.
Yes, you don't know where it is.
Yeah.
And so we're taking a step forward and hoping that we don't trigger these tipping points. And then the nightmare scenario is cascading events or cascading tipping points.
Right.
So for example, if the Atlantic current, which is slowing down, completely stops and goes a different direction, well, that can trigger a number of
All
other
sorts of
tipping points
chaos.
to suddenly tip. Yes.
Yeah.
So again, that's a big reason why you see scientists, warning societies and policymakers that, gosh, we're taking these little steps in this dark room and we don't know where the cliff is.
There are things we should be doing to tend to the problem. And then there are things we should be doing to tend to our hearts and souls, while we face the problems.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, we can't know everything about how it's going to turn out, but we still can make some right moves, in the meantime.
Yeah, it can be very concerning, but at the same time, there's plenty of space for hope,
Right.
plenty of space for action.
That's right. And always room for a miracle.
Awesome. So last question, great one to wrap this all up. Whose responsibility is climate change?
Do you have a mirror? Look in that. It's yours. It's mine. It's all of ours.
Yeah, it's everybody's. Deepest appreciation to Sarah and Anna for all their help, and to my co-host, Carrie.
And to my co-host, Robert.
Y'all are great.
Take it home, Mama.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure to produce Season 2 of Fahrenheit 140 and to have the gift of supporting the Meadows Center Climate Communications initiatives. Thanks to our co-hosts, Dr. Robert Mace and Carrie Thompson, and to you, our listeners. We encourage you to get or stay involved in your community. You can vote, you can volunteer, you can keep learning about climate change and the environment around you, and share what you learn with your friends. As we take our season hiatus, you can look for bonus content, follow us on social media, and join our newsletter. We'll drop those links in the show notes. This is your producer, Sarah Wingfield, signing off for Season 2. Have a lovely winter season, and we'll see you again in February.
Thank you all for being with us for another climate conversation. We hope you can take this information with you into your everyday life to help spread the knowledge and understanding of climate topics and their effects.
This podcast would certainly not be what it is without listeners like you. If you're listening through Spotify, take a quick moment to help us out and engage with the quiz and poll we've attached to this episode. And be sure to check the show notes for helpful links and resources.
Thank you to our funders for the Fahrenheit 140 podcast, both the Meadows Foundation and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. We'd also like to thank our communications team, Anna Huff and Sarah Wingfield.
If you'd like to learn more about the Meadows Center for Water and the Environment and how to visit our vital spring lake for a ride in a glass-bottom boat here in San Marcos, Texas, be sure to visit our website, meadowcenter.txst.edu. We have a number of climate resources there, including free lesson plans for your K-12 curricula. Sign up for our newsletters to get news, updates, and event opportunities hot off the press. I'm Robert Mace.
And I'm Carrie Thompson. Thanks for being part of the conversation.